Hey, it's Derek Hagan. I'm a financial therapist specializing in meaning in life and mindfulness here with another money health conversation where we're going to talk about the change process and ambivalence and how ambivalence makes change hard, but it's also necessary. As with most things in life, there are simple things and there are easy things, and those aren't necessarily the same, even though it feels like those are synonyms. Uh, just knowing something isn't going to help you change. So, making positive change, for example, is simple, the same way that losing weight is simple. I just need to eat fewer calories, or I just need to work out more. If I want to lose weight, I need to burn more calories than I take in. If I want to maintain, I need to eat about the same number of calories that I burn. That's pretty simple. If I want to do well financially, I just need to spend less than I make, save some for the future, and don't make any big mistakes. Simple. There's a lot of simple things in life, but that's not necessarily easy because easy, that's the realm of actually doing it. So positive change, making some kind of change in your life is often simple. You already know, you already know what you're supposed to do. It's just not easy because it's harder to implement. So making positive change, maybe that's spending less, or maybe that's finding a job that pays you what you're worth, so making more. Maybe that's not enabling your children financially. Maybe that's not keeping financial secrets. Whatever change happens to make, you're pushing this up a hill, a mountain called Ambivalence Mountain. Ambivalence makes change hard. Ambivalence means I feel something and I feel the exact opposite at the same time, not flip flopping back and forth at the same time. This is a little different from indifference. Indifference says I don't actually care one way or another. With ambivalence, I do care. I both want and don't want change. And then there's different flavors of this ambivalence. So you might have to choose between two choices. You might have a good option is option A, and option B is another good option. This would be the best form of ambivalence. You could think of it that way, but it's still uncomfortable. It's still ambivalence. This is choosing between two good job offers. And I can work at the software company and I can work at the consulting company. Both seem like really good jobs, but if I pick one, I can't pick the other. This is the kid in the candy store scenario. All right, this is if you win a prize and you could choose between one of two prizes. So this is the best form of ambivalence, but it is still uncomfortable. And the opposite of that is when you're stuck between a bad choice and another bad choice. So this is being stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you're familiar with the movie Sophie's Choice, this is you have to choose one of two bad options. Maybe I have to do something unethical at work, and if I don't, I'm fired. I don't want to do either of those. I don't want to get fired, nor do I want to do something unethical. Having to choose is ambivalent. It's difficult, and sometimes there's only one change to make. There's only one thing that you need to do, one decision to make, and that has both good and bad aspects. So maybe this is, do I go back to work or not? Maybe I stayed home and took care of the kids. Now I have to decide to go back to work. That's one decision, but that decision has both good and bad aspects. And the more I think about the good aspects, the more the bad aspects are going to pop up. There's pros and cons to that one decision. And you might argue that the worst kind or the toughest kind of ambivalence to work through is when I have to make two or more choices. And both of those choices have pros and cons. And this is going to set me up for potential future regret. Because I have to weigh these trade-offs of all these choices, and then I have to pick one. But did I pick the right one? I don't know. What if I could go back? Would I pick again? I don't know what I would do. It's very difficult, this ambivalence. And ambivalence shows up when we have a change to make. Now, change doesn't just happen like a light switch. Change doesn't just happen overnight. Nobody wakes up and says, today I'm going to start eating salads only. Or today I'm going to start running 3 miles a day. It doesn't happen. So there's a spectrum of change. And so information isn't enough. So there used to be a case where I used to think that if people didn't change, it's just because they didn't have enough information. So you shove more articles and you shove more data at somebody who's not willing to change, and it doesn't work. So obviously, there's more to it than just information. And it turns out people can be ready to change or not, and there's several stages. So this first stage is pre-contemplation, which means you've never even heard of it. There's no way you're going to make a change. There's no way that you know that there's even anything to consider. And if I recommended something called umbrella insurance to you, you might say, I don't even know what that is. Why would I ever consider umbrella insurance? So in pre-contemplation stage, you didn't know it was a problem until I told you it was a problem. If you're in pre-contemplation and I recommend something to you that you've never heard of, you might be confused why I'm talking to you. But then you start to learn that there's this thing that you might do, or maybe not. But there's this thing out there, this change that's possible. So now you're out of pre-contemplation and you're into contemplation stage. In contemplation stage, you've heard about it. I've heard that smoking's bad for me. I've heard that drinking might be bad for me. I've heard that I need to start working out more. Whatever the change happens to be, I learned that I need to save more of my income, or I need to cut my spending back. But maybe I still don't want to. I maybe have more reasons on the stay the same side than on the change side. So I know it's there, but I don't really want to do it. But eventually, as I get more and more reasons and I get more and more confidence and I recognize how more and more important it is to change, then I move up into the preparation stage of change. And at preparation, I'm starting to think about how I might do it. I'm starting to think about some of the things I might try. So now the scales of ambivalence have tipped a little bit. So now I might have more reasons on the change side instead of the stay the same side. Sometimes it's a major life event that really pushes me up into preparation. And then when you're starting to do things, when you're ready to go, you're in what's called the action stage. And at action, this is where information is actually helpful. This is where strategies are actually helpful because you're open and willing and ready to put in the time, to put in the effort. And there's a couple more stages after this. There's maintenance, where you're trying to implement your new lifestyle. And then there's integration or termination, where it's a part of you now and you're not likely to change. But the point is, if you're not in action stage, where you're ready to go, you're excited about change, and you're open to new ideas, your job isn't to try to change. Your job is to try to get yourself into the action stage. So this is where ambivalence, that hard feeling of I don't want to, but I kind of want to, both at the same time, where that starts to pop up, is in preparation. So ambivalence is not always bad, even though it's uncomfortable, because that pre-contemplation person has no idea that there's any change to make. Once you get into contemplation, now you're starting to feel ambivalence, which means you're starting to think about the process of change, which is good for you. As with everything else, you can't grow your muscles if you don't break them down with weights. There needs to be some kind of pain to overcome in order to grow. There's no growth in the comfort zone. Ambivalence is how you grow. And when you have decisions to make, it's helpful to connect to your values. When you've got the pros and cons list of all these choices that are ambivalent to you, how do you choose? Well, you connect to your values. Your personal values are the lens through which you view the world. They're the lens through which you determine whether or not your life is good or bad. And you can prioritize your values so that when you have a tough decision to make, you can prioritize your decisions.